All right, and welcome. Today we are going to be making a truth or dare spinner. And this is just to teach you how to understand tolerances. Tolerances are just the tiny little areas or the gaps in between certain parts of your design. And today we're going to focus on what like to call like clips or buttons. It's all pressure based, so that way we're not going to have to use any glue or anything like that. We're just going to use gravity and friction, and we're going to make something like this. This is a little truth or dare spinner that I've been working on this week, and it's got a little base at the bottom, and then you can kind of click on this or kind of flick the arrow here and spin it around, and then wherever it lands, you will answer, whether if you get a dare, you got to do a dare. If you get a truth, you got to tell a truth. So you could put any kind of words here. It could be yes, no, yes, no. It could be anything, really. But let's go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to teach you how to kind of pull off something like this so you can make a little spinner. So first thing, we're going to start a new project. Just do general, and we'll save that. And we'll start off here. Let me turn on my screen shortcuts. So if anytime you want to follow along, we've got the keyboard and the mouse shortcuts here. I've also got the 3D Print Toolbox add-on and the Bool tool and Auto Mirror. So if you don't have those, make sure you go into Edit and Preferences. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go take our first week free lesson over at ptt.live. And that will get you kind of set up with everything here. But let's go ahead and dive in. We don't need this cube, so I'm just going to delete the cube, and we're going to add in. Actually, before we start, getting a little bit ahead of myself, we're going to go to File and Save It, because you always want to save your project. So we'll call this Truth 2, because this is the second one. That's the original there. And go ahead and hit Save. All right, and for first thing we need is kind of that cylinder base. So we're going to do Shift A and create a new cylinder here. And I have a lot more options than you may see. That's just because I have extra objects turned on in the add-ons. But we're just going to do cylinder. And for the vertices, we want it to be really smooth. So let's do like 128. That just makes it more smooth around the edges. The radius, let's do like 50. There we go. And the depth, let's do like 3. It's really thin, because we want it to print really fast. And notice I've got this black cube around my my cylinder here, and that is the build dimensions of my 3D printer. This is a CR10, so it's 300 millimeters by 300 millimeters by 400 millimeters. So make sure you've set that up in the previous video, and let's go ahead and dive on in. So we've got our little cylinder here. Now let's add a modifier and do bevel, and let's take off this clamp overlays, and I'll show you a new trick I've been playing with here. If we increase the segments here, look at the edge here, you'll start to see it bevel right around there. So notice if I turn on wireframe, we've got some weird triangle artifacts going on here, and I'm not a big fan of that. So to get rid of that, instead change your limit method to angle, and that's what we want, something a little bit more like that. You can also harden your normals, sometimes that makes it look a little bit better, but let's just scale that up. That looks pretty good. I'm kind of just waiting until it all looks even. And now we've got this nice kind of rounded edge here. I like that. This may be a little too steep, so let's increase. Yeah, that looks good. So we'll just keep it in 3s. Now we've got 6. That looks cool. And then what we're going to do next is add another cylinder, and this is going to be the filament. So this design is 100% 3D printable, so we're going to use a piece of 1.75 millimeter filament to be kind of like our axis rod that runs up the middle. So let's go ahead and emulate that by Shift A. We're going to do a new cylinder, And we don't want it to be, you can kind of see they're on top of each other here, but we want it to be way smaller, maybe a radius of 1.75. That's the filament divided by 2, because we want the radius, so it's half. So, this is what we want it to be, 1.75 millimeters, and then we're telling Blender to divide it in half, which gives us 0.875. So that's an easy way to get that math. And so now the radius, or the diameter, is actually 1.75. The radius is half, obviously. And then let's make this like 20 millimeters. So there we go. Now we've got a little piece of filament right there. And that's all we need. So we're going to label that 1.75 millimeter filament. And this is our base. So go ahead and rename those files. And we'll go ahead and close our studio. We just want to be in our flexible design here. And now what we need to do is let's go back to our base and go to face mode right here and just select this top face, and we're going to inset it ever so slightly, just a little bit. And now we're going to extrude down. So let's extrude down. We don't want to go all the way through. I just want to go halfway through. So I'm going to go to 3 and go to my profile view. And then let's hit Z and go to wireframe. And so you can kind of see that white line here. It's a little too low if we're trying to go half. So maybe somewhere in here. That looks good. And we'll go back to solid. And look up here. If I turn my wireframes off, we've got like this kind of nasty edge here. It's not too bad actually, but I think it could be better. That looks pretty bad here. So what I think that is our modifiers may be out of order. So let's go to our base. We've got our bevel. Let's see, what does it say? Auto smooth option for hardened normals. Okay, so it wants us to enable auto smooth. So let's just do shade smooth. And that's nice. Go to our normals and auto smooth. So that's what it wanted us to do. Go into this little triangle here, hit normals and auto smooth. And you can adjust the angle there if you need to, but let's just set it 30. So we may have just maxed it out a little bit there. There we go. So let's do like maybe like 0.5. So we just kind of went above and beyond, kind of inverted this bevel here. So just make sure you've got somewhere around maybe 0.5. That should do it. Just give it a nice little curve edge there. So I'm liking that. We've got a kind of a base here. And what we need to do is subtract this filament here out of the base. So I'm just going to click on that, hold shift, click on the base, and then do control minus, and that will take out the filament. And it's kind of hard to see here. So I've got it enabled for wireframe, but we can always change that to bounds. And there we go. That's a little easier to see our whole action there. Hey. Let's just look at our modifiers for the base. And I'm going to keep my modifiers up top here, or my boolean up top, and then we'll bevel it. Notice the difference here if we rearrange. We've got this bool is very hard cut out, but if we want it to bevel as well, just put that bool up at top, and now we've got a nice little curve, which I think looks pretty cool. All right. And so now we've got the base. Let's add the little arm that's going to go around